So there are a lot of different gurus out on the internet now talking about church growth and specific tactics and all the different ways that you can grow your church. And everyone's talking about overnight explosive growth, but one of the things that gets overlooked often is healthy, sustainable church growth. So what we're going to do in this video is we're actually going to break down how to achieve healthy, sustainable church growth coming up. Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Chris Abbott, but all my friends just call me Abbo. And in this channel, we talk about practical ways that you can use social media, technology, and digital ministry in order to get the word out about your church and reach people for Jesus. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to break down 5 ways that you can achieve healthy, sustainable church growth. So let's dive in. All right, number 1, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you are unhappy with your church right now in any way, the problem isn't you, the problem is your systems. Rather than go out there and looking for the newest Facebook tactic or the newest social media tactic, right, what you need to do is you need to build systems into your church that can help you achieve sustainable church growth. 97% of churches in the US are under 300, and the majority of them are under 200, right? So why is it so hard for us to break through that elusive 200 growth barrier? Well, the reason is because when you get to about 150, 170, 180 people, what happens is you experience a social phenomenon called Dunbar's number. So basically what that means is that the average person can only successfully maintain about 150 relationships, right? Some people who are really socially gifted might be able to maintain 160, 170, maybe 180, but that's it. In order to grow your church up to 150 people, right? Someone who is a really good leader, who has a very charismatic personality, can do that on the strength of their personality alone. But once you start to hit that 150, 160, 170 number, you actually have to switch tactics, and you now have to build systems in order to help you break through the 200 barrier. Specifically, what you need to do is you have to switch from being the only person who does all of the pastoral care into more of a coach, and you have to begin to empower other emerging leaders inside of your church. Now, this isn't easy to do, especially if you're a little bit of a control freak, or if you're like me, if you have trouble giving things up and then not being happy with the way that people do it, right? But we have to get over that as leaders. We have to know that even if we have a leader in our church who does something 80% as good as us, it's actually better than us doing 100% of everything. When I was in youth ministry, I used to realize that a good idea from a youth kid was better than a great idea from me or one of the other youth leaders, right? So we have to empower these people, and the best way to do that is with systems, because you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. All right, number 2, learn the language of social media. Now, Tom Rainer says that failing to learn how to use social media effectively is like a missionary moving to a country and refusing to learn the language. Right? That is kind of a stinger, I think, for most of us, right? Because, man, learning social media is hard, and let's be honest, the dialects change all the time. There's constantly new platforms and new ways of using it, right? Like back in the day, there was just Facebook, right? But then there became Facebook Lives and Facebook Stories, and there's Facebook Watch, and there's all these different ways, right? Instagram has Instagram and Instagram Stories and IGTV and Instagram Reels, right? There's constantly new platforms like TikTok and Snapchat and all these different ones that are always emerging, and then there's even different ways to consume content inside of those platforms. But the bottom line is we have to learn how to speak the language of social media. That's the language of our culture. It's the language of people today. So just like a missionary would never move to a country without learning the language, we have to do the same thing, and it requires us constantly learning. So the best way to do this is just to become a student of human behavior and of social media, and to just pay attention, right? Just to listen. What we need to do is we need to start looking at social media like a missions field instead of like a platform. Right? So what happens is a lot of times it's very easy to get stuck in using social media platforms to just kind of yell your thing at the top of your lungs. You go on Facebook and announce the new sermon series that you have coming up, and you go on Instagram and talk about the baptisms and baby dedication service that you have coming up, right? And we're constantly using it for announcements, but it's not an announcement platform. This is actually a missions field. This is a place for us to listen. It's a place for us to do online ministry and have one-on-one conversations, right? Social media was meant to be social, so it should be conversations, not just a one-way monologue. And so this is one of the best things that we can do, is just commit to being a student of human behavior, a student of social media, and to stop looking at it like a platform and start looking at it like a missions field. All right, number 3, steal like an artist. Now, this one is really important, but it also comes with an important caveat. We want to steal like an artist, not steal like a thief, okay? Here's what I mean by that. Churches are notorious for going to Google and going into Google Images and saying, okay, I need a kids logo, and they type in kids church logo, and then they just steal one off of Google Images and literally use Photoshop or Canva to replace the name of that church with the name of their church, okay? Here's the deal. When you do that, it's actually stealing, okay? It's not ethical, and it's actually illegal too, right? So as a church, we have to be better than that. We can't just steal other people's hard work, right? We actually need to go in and we need to learn from them, right? So what's the difference between stealing like an artist and stealing like a thief? Well, maybe you saw a sermon series that another church did that you really liked the idea of, right? So maybe they had something called relationship rehab, right? And it was all about kind of, taking your marriage and your relationship and kind of, rehabbing it and creating something brand new. So you might take that idea and instead of just copying them, saying, okay, now we're going to go have relationship rehab. Maybe you take that idea and say, okay, I like the idea of rehabbing a relationship, making it new. What if we go create a sermon series called I Want a New Marriage? This is great because there's a lot of people out there who want a new marriage, right? Whether they're on the verge of divorce, whether they're going through a tough time, or whether they have a great marriage, but they just want to take it to the next level. Everybody wants a new marriage. So you took that idea that they were using of relationship rehab, you created something new, but you stole the core idea, right? The idea of creating a new marriage. And then you use that inside of your sermon series. So we need to do the exact same things. Now I see this a lot on church websites. I see this on Facebook ads, right? Is you don't want to go out, if you see a Facebook ad that somebody else wrote that looks good, you don't want to just steal it and copy that word for word and then paste it into your own Facebook ad and run it for your church, right? Just because they live in a different city or a different part of the country doesn't mean it's not stealing, right? It's still stealing. Don't steal like a thief, steal like an artist, right? When we steal like an artist, we take the idea. So maybe it's the idea of encouraging people, right? Maybe it's the idea of asking people how you can pray for them. Or maybe it's the idea of communicating about that marriage series that you just created, right? But don't just go steal somebody else's ad and run it word for word. Take the ideas behind it. If you like how they were encouraging people to, fight and get back up and going through something, right? Take that same theme, but write your own words, write your own copy. Right? I've seen this on church websites. I've seen it on Facebook ads. I've seen it on direct mail pieces, right? Take the idea, the core idea of encouraging people or promoting marriage or a new marriage, right? Or something like that, but then go write your own copy. Now, if you are horribly uncreative and you're saying, Abbo, listen, that sounds great, but I can't write to save my life. I'm not a creative person. I don't know how to do this. Well, great. You can actually go on something like Fiverr.com, right? If you've never gone on Fiverr, it's tons of things that cost like $5, right? Fiverr.com, and you can literally look up copywriting. So you can find people to write copy for your website or for a Facebook ad or for a direct mail piece or whatever it is that you're doing, right? And you can actually find people to do things really, really cheap. So you don't have to do it yourself. Again, let's get past the place where we are stealing like a thief and let's steal like an artist. We'll take the ideas from other people, we'll change them, mold them, breathe our own vision and DNA into them, and then let's use those ideas to reach people who are lost and need to know Jesus. All right, so before I get to my last couple of points, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We put out brand new videos every single day, 5 days a week, that are dedicating to helping you get the word out, reach people, do online ministry, and grow your church. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you hit that little bell notification, you'll get notified every single time we drop a new video. All right, number 4, the only limitations you have are the ones inside your own head. Now, I know that it's super easy for us to start to feel held back by some of the limited resources that we have, right? Maybe it's limited money, maybe it's limited volunteers, maybe it's limited time because you're bivocational and you also have to work another job. But here's the deal. Craig Rochelle says that limited resources are a breeding ground for innovation. Right? It doesn't matter the level that you're at. Everybody has limited resources of one or another, right? Even if you have $100 million budget, you've still got resources because you still can't do all the things that you want to do. Those limited resources that you feel, they're never going to go away. You're just going to exchange them for larger resource problems, right? So that's the way it works. Even with huge mega churches and massive ministries that have multi-million-dollar budgets, right? You're always constrained by the amount of volunteers, the amount of people you have, the amount of buildings that you have, the amount of parking that you have. Instead of looking at that as a limitation, look at it as your unfair advantage, right? How can you use those limitations in order to springboard your church into an innovative solution that no one on the planet has ever thought of? So if you have a small church, a small budget, maybe you have a portable church, lack of volunteers, right? Whatever it is, just remember that the only limitations that you have are the ones inside your own head. Those are not limitations, they're actually your unfair advantage. So for example, when I was a youth pastor, we did a really good job of reaching people 0 to 18, and then we did a really good job of reaching people who were 40 all the way up to senior citizens. But there was a giant gap of us reaching people from 18 to 40, which typically are your prime youth leaders. And so I just couldn't find people to be youth leaders. No matter who I would ask, everyone would either turn me down or they would promise to pray about it and then just kind of duck me for 3 or 4 weeks, right? If you guys have been youth pastors, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so it just got awkward and weird, and I was like, man, I can't find youth leaders anywhere. And so the crazy thing was our youth group was growing. We literally went from about 60 to 65 kids to 130 kids in 90 days. The church was growing, right? But we were having 130, 140, 150 kids, and I had 4 youth leaders. Right? So what I realized is this was just a chance for me to innovate. So what I did, because I couldn't recruit youth leaders, is I actually took all of our juniors and seniors. Now again, if you've been in youth ministry, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. But typically what happens is you do a great job reaching 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th graders. But once those 10th graders start to get their license, they peace out and you don't see them anymore. Right? And so that's why so many youth groups do a great job reaching a younger generation, but they don't do a great job reaching juniors and seniors. So what I did is I actually went to my juniors and seniors. I said, here's the deal. I'm launching a brand new internship. You have to apply to be a part of it. And here's what you're going to be responsible for. You're going to help me put on the services. You're going to help me pick the sermons that we preach about. You're going to help me preach some of the sermons. We're going to be doing skits. We're going to open up a snack bar and you're going to run it like a small business, right? And then all of the money that we make from all the snacks, you get to choose what we reinvest that into. You're going to help me design all of the flyers and hoodies and t-shirts and everything that we do, right? So the kids were pumped. They started filling out applications. And just like that, I had an additional 20 kids who now became my youth leaders / interns. So this was a way to keep the juniors and seniors still plugged into our youth group without losing them. But it was also a way for me to fill the gap of having a bunch of youth leaders that I just couldn't find from the adults in our church. What happened is those limited resources, right? That idea of, man, we just don't have anybody in our church between 18 and 40. Nobody wants to be a youth leader. We turned that into an unfair advantage, created an innovative solution, launched an internship, and had a ton of kids that we got involved, and the youth group began to grow even faster because now we had a bunch of high school kids that were investing into the middle school kids. And finally, number 5, growing churches don't find great leaders, they build them. Now, I actually learned this from Carey Nieuwhof, and I absolutely love it. As I began to look at it, I realized this is exactly what happened to our church. So when I first became a youth leader at my church back in 2001, a bunch of those kids who were in middle school and high school are now on staff at our church, and they're the leaders who are helping run our church and helping us reach the next generation. What happened is these were homegrown leaders. So people that come into our church would look at it and they see, a church that's reaching tons of young people and that's doing a really, really good job raising up the next generation and has a bunch of emerging leaders, right? But it's not like we went out and recruited them somewhere. We trained them up. Like, those are homegrown. We've got worship leaders who literally started in our church when they were in 1st and 2nd grade. They literally came up through our kids ministry, through the middle school ministry, through the high school ministry. They did a full-time ministry internship at the church, right? And they began to get more and more reps, and we began to train them in this. So a lot of churches would come in and just be like, oh my gosh, if only I had the leaders you guys had, right? And I would say, well, yeah, you can. All it does is take 20 years to build them. Like, we literally just had to home grow them all the way through our systems and our processes, but they've grown up in our culture, so they know the DNA of our church. They're familiar with the mission and they're bought in, right? So understand, instead of looking at churches and saying, oh my gosh, why aren't the leaders in my church like the leaders in the churches that I look up to? Well, the reason is because you haven't led them there yet, right? So what you need to do is you need to start taking time to invest in the next generation and raising up leaders, because you don't find great leaders, you build them. Okay, so if you want to learn more about how to achieve healthy, sustainable church growth, I recommend joining the Church Marketers Facebook group on Facebook. You can literally just go to Facebook and type in Church Marketers, or you can click on the link in the description below. But I'm one of the admins inside of that group, along with Ryan Wakefield and a bunch of the Church Marketing University team. There is a ton of great pastors and church leaders in there having discussions every single day on how we can reach more people for Jesus. So jump into the Facebook group. We'll see you soon.